are fine, but we are going to, so we have our two pieces. They are 3 inches by 5 inches, right? We've cut them using a ruler along the edge so that they're clean and that our cuts are nice and smooth like that, as opposed to jaggedy looking like this. We don't want that. All right? From here, we're going to measure using our ruler. And you have 5 inches across. You want to go close to the edge, very close to the edge. Scooch it right up. If you guys notice, there's a lot more measurements over here on the left side of the ruler, 1 through 4. And there's a lot more division to each inch. Just for ease on your eyes, if you want to start at the 4 like I do, and it balances the ruler out, it's nice. And you're going to just make a tiny little mark on each inch. So 1 inch increments all the way down. Just like I did. From there, you're going to bring the material up to your other material that you have kind of lined up. You want to make sure that they're edge to edge. And then you're going to just transfer those marks. It's important that you do it this way as opposed to measuring both sides, because if you were slightly off on one measurement, it won't matter because they'll match. What we're creating today is a finger joint, and I'll show you what that is. A finger joint is like this, right? That's a finger joint. And that's what we're going to create. So we want 1 inch increments like this. Okay? And then we're going to take the material. I need you guys to watch this particular part so that you understand what I'm asking you to do. Take the material, and just like we did with the lap joints, we're going to bring it up to the edge. Make sure it's right on that edge. Take our super sharp pencil and draw a line. And then we're going to do the same thing in the other direction. Bring it up to the edge. Make sure it's nice and flush to the edge. This stuff's a little slippery, so you got to make sure. You got to hold it tight. And then draw a line. So that you'll have 2 lines in this direction. I'm going to just double check this side because I don't feel like I got it just so. Yeah, I was a tiny bit off. So now I have this. Once I do that, I'm going to opposite X my waist. So I'm going to X right here, and then I'm going to X right here. So on and so forth, all the way down. So you can see the X's are opposite each other so that it works out like a finger joint. Okay? All right, next step from here, you're going to do this one at a time. The X indicates the waist. So I'm going to bring the camera actually just a tiny bit closer so you can see the cuts on this. All right, again, we want to line up using the grid on your mat, and we're going to line up the straight edge with your horizontal, and then the first mark that we have right here with the vertical, right? And you want to make sure it's lined right up with it. And then I'm doing the 7-inch mark right there. So I'm just going to line up my ruler with the vertical line right on my mark for the pencil. And, whoops, I almost forgot something. I've got to have my glove on for this because I'm using the X-Acto blade. And then I'm going to, again, just cut up right to that line that I created earlier and just cut down just a little bit. Again, scrape first, then cut through. And you're going to want to do this all the way down on both pieces. And you've got to use a grid and you've got to use your ruler in order to get it right. bless you. Do it on both pieces. You're going to have to turn the other piece around a little bit so that you can, you know, orient it so you can cut it. With this step, you want to be as precise as possible so that your joints fit together nicely. The more precise you are here, the nicer they're going to fit together. Sometimes it's a little difficult to get your ruler to sit nicely on there. You just have to kind of fuss with it until you get it just right. The next step, again, you need your glove, you need your ruler. I'm going to do the waist side on this material. In fact, I'm going to start with the other side because it gives me two outside edges, which is nicer. So you see where I have my X, right? Those are the pieces that we're taking out. So those are the pieces that I want to cut in this direction. So I'm going to line this up with that line that I created so I know the thickness. I want to hold this tightly so it doesn't slide on me. I'm going to start with the outside edges because it's easier. And again, I scrape first and then start making some passes until I take the whole thing out, and you'll get a clean cut like that. I can do the top one here. When I'm doing this, what you want to notice is that I don't move this hand nor the ruler as I'm cutting on this line. You want this line to be all the same. So if you move it, it will change it ever so slightly. So you don't want to do that. And if it doesn't come out, just leave it. We'll get it later. This one, I'm going to do this mid-field one. It has a joint on either side. You have to be careful on this side so you don't overcut into your joint. And you're going to get most of it, but not quite all of it. So this one didn't want to come out. So instead of forcing it out, I'm just going to come back in this direction. And I'm going to come back in this direction, and then it'll come out easily. So for this one, I want to come back this way. Reestablishes the cuts I already made, and it should come out nicely if you do that. So do that with both sides. One side will be all kind of in field, meaning in between the two outside edges. Again, scrape. Remember that blade has got to be straight up and down. You want it perpendicular. So I don't mean like this. I mean like in this orientation. The actual flat surface of the blade should be perpendicular. Once your blade goes down, you can change it up, and you should be able to fit these snug together like so, and that gives you a great corner joint. Alright, so the next joint we are going to be creating after this finger joint is what's considered to be a mortise and tenon. Okay, this is a mortise and tenon. The mortise is this part, and the tenon is this part. And we're going to create, this is a little bit harder, so the first one is a good kind of warm-up. Now, the first joint is a great corner joint. So when we have a model and we're trying to create a model that, you know, that's structurally sound, the reason this is good, this won't shear, won't move on us, and it creates more glue surface throughout the joint, okay? If you have a wall that comes into the field of your, you know, kind of major structure, so a kind of a midfield wall, you need to have a way to attach that as well, and this is a great way to do it. I've done this so that you guys will have a little extra on the outside. You don't have to do that when we have your final model. This is just to show you how that looks, just to give you an option, okay? So we're going to do that with this same material here. And get this kind of cleared off. So what you want to start with is a midfield line. So that means just a line like kind of in the center, not on the outside edge. So I'm going to put that right about here. And again, I'm still going to use my grid, my ruler, so that I get it just the way I want to, and it's perpendicular. Because I'm imagining you're going to want your walls perpendicular, but maybe not. I don't know. All right, guys in the back, I need you focused. Thank you. So once I get that midfield line, I'm going to take this material and again line it up with that line, right? Make sure I'm really precise, and that will be my thickness. So those are my first two lines that I want to create, right? And that's where we're going to create the tenon. But before we cut that, that's where this is going to go. Before we cut that, we're going to cut our mortises. Yeah. There is no measurement. It just has to be midfield. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It just has to be in the middle, not on the end. So on this material, on our A piece, we're going to cut out our mortises. To make this a little bit easier, just measurement-wise, we're going to again do every inch. Okay. So then I've done 1 inch marks, right? And with those 1 inch marks, the outside's going to be waist, the inside middle is going to be waist, and then the outside on the left side is going to be waist. Now, because I want to make these thicker, on this, I want to measure this thickness twice. That's just going to be our measurement. So I'm going to, again, act as if I'm going just for one thickness, and then I'm going to add one more. So it'll be twice as thick as we need it to be. Make sure that you're right on the line the way you want to be. And that'll give us a second mark. So you have 2 thicknesses that you're measuring out here. Once you do that, lay it out on your grid. Remember, we're on a 1 inch increment right here. And before we start cutting anything, we're going to draw these out so that you can see them. So I'm going to, again, use the grid so that I know I'm 90, because we're going a little further into this material. That one needs to be a little to the right. And I'm using the grid because I'm going all the way back to the second line. And again, this is my waist, this is my waist, this is my waist. Please X your waist. And then from here, we're going to cut these just the way we did the other ones, but we want to really make sure we're using the grid on this so that this is 90 degrees right here. So I'm going to line it up horizontally. I'm going to line it up vertically. And I'm going to, again, scrape first. And then cut all the way through and go all the way down and do this on each one. So it's a similar action as the last joint, but you're going a little further into the material. This would be considered a through tenon. Once I've cut all the way through on those, I'm going to do this back line here just like we did with our first joint, lining up my ruler. I'll start with this one, it's the easiest. Again, scraping first, keeping that knife perpendicular. And I'll come up here and do this one. And again, if it doesn't come out right away, just leave it. We're going to come back in the other direction to get that corner. That way you can kind of just pop it right out like that. And now you have a joint. And this joint is going to fit right here. So next steps with this are going to be determining where to cut the two rectangular holes so that this works out just the way you want. So what we want to do is line up the sides like this. And you see how this is a longer piece. This is part of the reason why I do it a little longer. So I can come up to this double line and just use the actual joint to measure where my waist is going to be. Do you guys see how I just did that? All right, so you got to be looking in order to see how to do this. You got to have it lined up like this on the side. Use your joint that you've already created to cut, and then this is our waist. So then we need to cut this out. So to cut that out, again, you need your glove. Please do not forget your glove. You need your ruler. You need to X where you're going to be cutting it out. And you also need to cut, when I'm cutting on the left side, I want to cut both of those at the same time. Okay? If I don't cut both of those at the same time, then it won't be straight. And then you always want to cut on your waist side. Guys in the back, can you please stop your conversation and listen? Thank you. So you notice I turn the whole piece around so that I'm always cutting on the waist side. That way if your blade slips or anything, that you're going to cut into an area or space that it won't matter. I even do that on the short sides here. Now these are a little harder because it's a, you know, a little rectangle midfield. So it's hard to really get it super precise on both sides. So you just really got to work it and go slow. Don't rush this, because we want this mortise and tenon to go all the way through. That's a little more challenging. And you want to make sure to get all your cuts just exactly where you want them started, so that you, when you come through the other side, and as soon as I finish this one I'll show you what I mean, that it looks good. So you can see I'm almost through on a lot of them, but some of them I still need to work a little bit. So now that I've got my lines established, I'm going to come in on each corner to make sure that I'm going straight through and getting it right up to each corner. And I do that with like all 4 corners on each of these. And then I check the back to see if I've come through. And there's still a few spots that I need to kind of make sure I get. Once it starts to get loose tooth enough, you should be able to pull it right out. Nope, this one's not ready yet. I still have a spot right here. Sam asked first, so you're going to have to wait. All right. Once I've done this, wrong ones, hold on, wrong joint, I should be able to bring my other piece up, push it all the way through. It should look lovely, just like that. That's your midfield joint, like so. Okay, I'm going to pause there. All right, so we've done, you know, our first 2 joints, right? We've got our finger joints here that work a corner. We have our mortise and tenons that work a midfield. So if you have like a wall that's in between, like in the distance of a larger outside wall, you can use something like this to hold it stable. Okay, and these work great, especially when you're planning. So we want to have most of our joints look like this if we're using this material or any of the other materials that we have, which we have. This is only one of many that we have that we can use. But what happens if you have a corner that you forgot, an extra corner, a smaller thing, a place that where you've got your model half built and you don't know what to do, right? You're like, I can't take this whole thing apart and cut a joint, right? So if that's the case, another option, and there's a few different things, but this is a good one, is to take a piece of, you could take a piece of foam board and glue it here, or you could take a little piece of balsa wood and glue it on a corner, and then come over and take another piece and glue that there. And how you'd glue that, you'd want to take just a little bit of glue on the surface. You don't want to put a ton of glue when you're doing this kind of technique, because if you use too much, it becomes difficult to, I don't know, this is not going to work for me. Hold on one second. It's closed up on me. There we go. So you don't want to use a ton of glue. If you use a lot of glue, it'll slide all over the place. So I just put a little bit on there, and then I'm bringing my corner over, and I would literally just let it sit. I know that white glue takes a little bit of time, but I would just let that sit. Now, if I have a joint where it's midfield, like our mortise and tenon, what I could do is do two little pieces that are like this little piece and put it on either side, and as I put the second side on, right, I could put this other piece of material in there so we know how thick it should be and glue that down, right? And then from there, I could take this, add a little piece, a little bit of glue. Again, you don't need a ton. Slide it in very nicely. And that would be very stable as a midfield joint, all right? So that would be the two joints that you could use if, for whatever reason, you know, your model's together, you just can't get in there, the space is too small. There's lots of reasons why you wouldn't be able to use these, all right? This is a secondary option. You guys don't have to make this a practice it, because I feel like you all could do this. All right? Does that make sense? Any questions? You guys good?